Today I'm going to talk on a very important issue, and that issue is a question all of us have to address. Is social media a threat to democracy? Good question. Now, before, yes, thank you. Thank you. And before we answer that question, we've got to ask the first question. What is democracy? Well, an American said it is of the people, by the people, for the people. Simply put, it is majority rule. But let's say, if it is majority rule and you have 99 people in a village, and those 99 people decide that one chap is too fat, too old, and too ugly, and should be killed, would that be all right? Yes, no? No? If all of you decided that I was bald, and Esther was inconvenient, and the two of us should be thrown off the top floor head first, would that be okay?
No.
No. All right. Why not? Because of the law. You're getting there. Democracy does not necessarily mean just rule of the majority. Majority rules in modern democracy, which is a very new phenomenon. We forget that. In fact, modern democracy is around 200 years old in this country. And if you go by some accounts, it is barely 100 years old. Women got the vote as late as 1920. So modern democracy is a very new phenomenon. In my country, India, we got our independence only in 1947. And much of the world is not a democracy even today. So democracy is A, young, and B, fragile, a bit like you. So modern democracy is not just majority rule. It is majority rule, but the majority rules by rule of law. You have a set of principles, you have constitutions, you have codes, independent codes. You have something called a collective set of beliefs, shared values, and because in the nitty-gritty things can get tricky as to, okay, who's going to, in this group, who's going to clean up after a party in class? In this group, who decides who can play loud music when? And whose right to sleep? Whose right to sleep trumps someone else's right to listen to music? Or whose right to study trumps someone else's right to play ping pong on their head? You see, democracy demands civic engagement. Democracy is built on a bedrock of critical thinking. The day you stop thinking and the day you stop engaging, you cease to have a democracy. All right? Democracy is not majoritarian rule, and it is certainly not mob rule. Democracy is a way through which a group of people engage in a back and forth and come up with decisions that are largely or almost invariably decided by the majority, but ideally they should be based on reason and discussion. With me, everyone? Jolly good. That brings us to the second question. Question 2. What is a threat? Anyone?
I can name a few.
Well, let's go a little classical.
No, let that be.
Let's go a little classical. Let's look at the etymology of the word. That tells you a lot. The etymology of threat comes from Old English. It has Old English origins. And at that time, it meant pressure, it meant oppression, it meant hardship. What it really means in the current context is that it puts something at risk or at peril. That brings us now to the third question, which will have a follow-up question, of course. Is social media a threat to democracy? But before we get onto it, we have to ask ourselves, what is social media? What is social media? Any ideas?
Media that you use to talk to other people.
All right, such as email,
Email,
telephone,
Facebook.
Facebook, okay. What else? Instagram, perhaps? How many use Twitter? Snapchat?
They don't like Twitter so much.
I see. Okay.
How many of you guys like Snapchat?
Snapchat, how many?
They don't like it either.
Oh, wow. And Facebook? Facebook, how many of you? Everybody. WhatsApp?
Y'all are lying.
WhatsApp?
Sorry?
WhatsApp? Excellent. All right, so jolly good. So there is an argument, hold fire. There is an argument that social media actually is a jolly good thing. It's wonderful. It democratizes discourse. Anyone, anytime, can publish any content. In fact, anything on social media. You can go and tweet that I'm an idiot. And you can go and tweet that Mahatma Gandhi was a fascist and great friends with Adolf Hitler. You can do that. You can put a post on Facebook that says the sun rises in the west. There's nothing to stop you. Now, most people on Facebook post photos of their friends, the food they are eating perhaps, some movie they have watched, yada, 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 even news items. But at the end of the day, all of these social media companies, and they are all companies, are for-profit entities. And what is the fiduciary duty by law? We've just discussed democracies are based on law. What is the fiduciary duty by law of a chief executive officer of any company? What is the fiduciary duty? All four of you in the back. Any ideas? Excellent. What is the fiduciary duty of a CEO of any company? No? It's a very simple one, really. Pardon me? Maximize profits. Maximize profits. Yes, make profits. Now, two of you perhaps have Chinese origins or Asian origins, right? What do you think the British East India Company did from 1757 to 1857? How did they do it? Yes? Well, it was very simple. They grew opium in India and they sold it to the Chinese. So it was famine for the brown people and addiction for the yellow people. And of course, some money for the English people. It's all jolly good. It's excellent. So if you are a social media CEO, what is your fundamental goal? How do you make money? You make money by making your product as addictive as possible because you're in the attention economy game. The more you can suck people's attention, the more you can sell them advertising and make money. Ipso facto, you have to make your product as addictive as possible. It is not about truth. It is not about discourse. It is about getting people to constantly crave attention and share things to gain attention. Now, it has worked. Facebook has about 1.5 billion people every day on its platform. It has roughly 2.25, perhaps the number has gone up even further, monthly active users. It is fantastic for Mark Zuckerberg's pocket. But we know that in the 2016 election, Cambridge Analytica did use Facebook and did enable Donald Trump to be elected. Neil Ferguson, who is quite right-wing as a historian and teaches at Harvard and is at Hoover here in Stanford, said in a podcast, no Facebook, no Trump. It's ironic given the fact that Facebook, the leadership of Facebook is largely democratic. But the truth is, demagogues all around the world, and there have been n number of research reports. I wrote an article titled Mark Zuckerberg is More Dangerous Than Donald Trump, which chronicles all this in great detail, which I'm happy to send to you, along with Jack Riddick's article, talks about this phenomenon. In Brazil, people like Bolsonaro have used social media brilliantly. Bolsonaro is the new president of Brazil. Shall we say he's slightly crazy?
Slightly.
He told, all right, he's completely crazy, Lester. He told a woman, he told a congresswoman he wouldn't rape her because she was too ugly. Charming, isn't he? This is a man who's now president of Brazil. I could give you quotes from Duterte, but I don't want to disturb you too much. In places like India, in places like Myanmar and of course Bangladesh and other developing countries, WhatsApp has been the single biggest tool of propaganda, hate, and ethnic cleansing. The Rohingya genocide that happened in Myanmar was a result, to a great degree, of campaigns on Facebook and WhatsApp. Now you may say, hang on a minute, this is not really Facebook's fault. Well, maybe it isn't. Let me ask you a simple question. Should you have the right to post something that says that people of X race or Y nationality or Z religion, or Z as you say in America, should be slaughtered? Should you have the right to be able to post that on Facebook or send messages on WhatsApp? That people should be slaughtered?
Well, I mean, people should be able to say
anything.
Yeah.
So you should be able to say that you want to kill her because of her race.
Yeah.
You guess.
I guess like you can say what you.
Exactly. But the point is, if you say it and you have 200 fanatical followers and if she gets killed, should you be tried for murder?
Like maybe like obviously you didn't like.
Think about it. You should be there are limits generally, as we just discussed in democracy, to everything, including freedom of speech. Generally, we don't allow people to say, let's kill black people, for a good reason. There's a history of slavery, Ku Klux Klan, whatnot. Generally, we get very nervous when there is anti-Semitism. Not too long ago, 6 million Jews ended up in concentration camps and gas chambers. There are limits generally that we put to everything, including freedom of speech, because we want it to be based on facts, reason, and tolerance. Now, with Facebook, employing people to do fact check means the expenditure of Facebook or replace Facebook with Twitter or anything, means that the expenditure will go up, which means their bottom line will go down. They'll have less profits. But their structure is to maximize profits. It's not in their interest to have fact check. Now, there may be social pressure, they may do it, but the structure of both the medium and the organization is not geared for fact check. More importantly, because Facebook and social media throws a tumult of information at you, you're living in an age of information overload. You've lost the ability to focus and think. Also, we know of numerous studies, particularly by Professor Twenge, that reveal that social media has led to a mental health crisis. Because we didn't evolve to look at screens. We evolved to engage with each other, eye to eye, face to face. Suddenly you're on screen, suddenly you're comparing yourself to other people, suddenly you feel your life is the only life that is uncool, everyone else is in Hawaii and Honolulu and God knows where. And what is fascinating is that social media has now become the platform for news. First, people don't pay. First, people don't even read. Most people, I'm not saying all, most people don't read news anymore. Second, most people don't pay. Esther is an exception. She's a monthly donor to us. She reads and she pays.
Unusual.
Very unusual. And three, even when people read, they read smatterings. They don't pick up a newspaper and go through it. And in a representative democracy, Edmund Burke gave the term the fourth estate to the press, because the press is what keeps an eye on your representative and makes sure that your representative acts in your interests rather than in his or her own. Otherwise, let's say you elect her and she looks suitably nice, but then she goes off to Capitol Hill and then Facebook comes along and says, we will give you $10 million for your next re-election campaign. It's a very strong possibility. She may say, that's a good offer. What do you want? Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Which is why Edmund Burke talked about the fourth estate, which was the press that was allowed access in Parliament to keep an eye on people's representatives, to hold their feet to the fire, and at the same time to inform and educate the public. Now, it turns out now that 50% of people get their news in America from Facebook. In developing countries, the number is worse. The University of WhatsApp sends all kinds of messages in India, Myanmar, and elsewhere. So,
Before they used to get their reviews. I did a survey about 10 years ago,
yeah,
and my students said, I asked them where they got their news.
Yeah.
They're like, from my mom and dad. So things haven't changed that much, right?
Okay, yeah, so go ahead. But let's say for adults, one of the things that social media has done is, because its algorithms give you things that you like, it sends you into an echo chamber. You only hear what your peer group hears or you want to hear. And it has deepened divides. It has chipped away at the common beliefs that go into making a democracy. And most importantly, it has vitiated discourse. Let us take your example. If you had the right to say, you should kill her, I doubt you could have a discussion with her to function collectively. If in this class there was a breakdown of trust, and each group got divided on the basis of religion or race or some other factor, you would not be able to function collectively. And the reason social media is a threat is because it has chipped away at our attention and it has broken trust in society. And by doing so, it has become a threat to modern democracy. I will take questions now. Thank you very much for your attention. So we finished, we have plenty of time for questions.
Right.
Excellent. Excellent. Yes, you want a mic?
I think got a lot of voice.
So,
Brilliant.
what do you think is the solution to this problem?
I think it is going to be a process. There is no quick fix. I think one of the things we have to get back to doing is things like this, the back and forth, the questioning, the discussing, the de-addiction from social media. The second thing, of course, and it's not me, Robert Reich and Steve Bannon, two people who couldn't be more opposite to each other. And I wrote an article 2 days ago about breaking up big tech. This is not an original argument. Steve Bannon has made this argument that we should break these companies up and put the data in a trust. And Robert Reich has made this argument that we need a return to Teddy Roosevelt's type of breaking up monopolies and oligopolies. And I think part of it will happen at the individual level, that we start spending more time talking to each other and spending time away from screens and talking to people different to us. That's why I come here. All of you are very different to me. I grew up in a developing country. You can see this. This comes from Africa. I lead the life of a global nomad. 30th, I'm flying to India. I'll be there for a bit, for a few months. Then I'm in Europe. Then I'm back. And so on and so forth. So I lead a very different life to yours. And part of it will be conversations like this. And part of it is us functioning together in a democracy and breaking the power of big tech, breaking up the bigger companies, taking the data away from them. For instance, how many of you have read the terms and conditions of any social media company when you sign on to them? Maybe one or two, at most. And even if you do, would you understand them? They're all drafted by very expensively trained Harvard, Yale, Oxford, Cambridge lawyers. They are full of legalese. You won't even understand it. So the solution is a long-term one of which is, of course, individual. We de-addict ourselves, and the other is, of course, breaking big tech, breaking them into small companies and taking the data away and putting the data in the hands of trust. Because data is the modern-day oil. You shouldn't be sold stuff on a photo you post. Your geolocation shouldn't be sold to people, things like that, because that makes you very vulnerable. Yes, next question. That's it? No more questions? I'm sure you have some. Yes, shoot.
I was wondering if you could talk about how Facebook helped Trump win the election and how that's inclusive.
That's a very good question. I think now that there has been plenty of research that Facebook ended up giving data to Cambridge Analytica. Cambridge Analytica used that data to target voters on trigger issues. And there was a lot of fake news being sent to them. And this fake news was all kinds of stuff, that Hillary Clinton would take away their guns, for instance, if you were a gun owner, and so on and so forth. And to be fair, Hillary Clinton could have done it too. The digital campaign of Barack Obama was pretty sophisticated, and many of the tactics that the Trump campaign used were used in the Obama campaign, but the fake news element was really outlandish in the Trump campaign. And what they did was they really targeted voters in swing states and voters who cared about a particular set of issues and got them to turn out to vote. And it wasn't just Cambridge Analytica, of course. There is a fair degree of indication that the Russians were playing their wrong too. So I mean, in some ways, what happened was an extension of what used to happen earlier. In earlier campaigns, all these things did exist. It's not that these are new. Ronald Reagan declared his campaign in Neshoba County in 1980. And Neshoba County was the place where 3 anti-segregation activists were killed. And that's the subject of the film Mississippi Burning. And he talked about states' rights, and he was playing dog whistle politics. So, this sort of thing has gone on in politics for a while, but this time it was very targeted, clinical, and very individualized and personalized.
I don't understand how that is something that can take you seriously. That without Facebook killing the president.
Well, it's a good point. There's a probability she could have been. The reality is that she was outsmarted in campaigning by Trump campaign, and they did use Facebook better. So it was, shall we say, it certainly did contribute to giving some advantage to Trump.
I mean, I feel like at the same time, Facebook, there are also extents talking about Trump, racist comments, and all those things.
Sure.
That are trying to get away.
Yes and no. All these posts were going to people who were already in the Hillary camp. The Germans are very good, the Danes are very good, the Scandinavians are very good, the French are very good, so the Dutch are very good. So the key thing is that you take a step out and explore a wider world. That's the only way. That's why we want to always make sense of the world.
I have another question over here.
Yes, please.
Oh, yes. When the Cambridge Analytica news came out,
Yes.
I guess the thing that surprised me, I guess maybe I shouldn't have been surprised, but the data from Facebook had first been shared with the professor at Cambridge.
Yes.
Cambridge. I guess I didn't realize, I understand why Facebook might want to share its data in order to have sociological and psychological academics doing research.
Yeah.
But do you know anything about how widely they share it, what their guidelines are, what their policies are? Because that seems to me like it's such an obvious source of potential first step toward misuse of the information. I mean, how do you weigh, yes, it's great to have this sociological data available to academics versus the risk, which obviously happened, of that data just being completely misused?
Yeah, I mean, look,
and I don't know what their
the
policy
details.
is.
I don't know the
you don't?
details,
Okay.
but I can tell you that they have very loose policies because they do sell data. If you look, they've done mood experiments in the past.
Yes.
So I think now they are tightening it up, I'm sure. But even then, for a long period, it was very much move fast and break things. They were cavalier, they grew too fast. So they didn't have any clear guidelines. And frankly, a lot of people had access to all kinds of data before. It turns out all the revelations that are coming out, including the latest one, in which I shouldn't speak about it. I don't know the details of that. But there's another story in which data, the numbers are much higher and the, permissions were not taken from people and it was just shared. So, I mean, these stories are coming out on a daily basis.
Specifically in terms of sharing with academics.
I don't know enough to comment.
And
Sorry.
does Google do that too?
Pardon me?
Does Google?
I wouldn't know. But I suspect that these companies have played fast and loose with data for a very long time. Yes.
So long before there were social media companies collecting data, there were other kinds of companies collecting similar data, similar information about opinions and so on, and creating profiles of likely voters and helping campaigns target people.
Sure.
So that
it goes back to Freud's nephew, Eddie Bernays.
Exactly. It goes way back. It's not a new idea at
Yeah.
all. So one thing you just said had to do with the permissions.
Yeah.
So it seems to me one issue is Facebook or Google collect so much information more than any polling company could collect.
Possibly. Because your life is online.
Because if they can mine it, they can get it. But oftentimes I feel like really where the argument lies is around the question of permission. And if they had a bunch of in that long document that nobody ever reads, it
Yeah.
said, I sign away my rights to my data, go ahead, you sell it to any Analytica you want,
Yes.
then it would be, we would all give it up easily.
Yes, so you're making an argument that people in European Commission are making about, it was the same argument against big tobacco, right? That put down a big
Disclaimer.
disclaimer that smoking kills.
Right.
And if people still choose to smoke, at least all the time they are having to look at
Or
the
at least,
label.
I mean, I don't think it actually is to stop people from smoking, it's to protect companies from
Correct.
legal liability.
Exactly.
So we users
Yeah.
are participating in the
Correct.
fraud that Facebook is
Sure.
putting on us.
Sure, that is true. Users
Right.
are, but I think let's take a step back and say that it was new, and for a lot of users, it is something akin to a drug dealer has an advantage, has an information asymmetry over a young teenager who tries cocaine for the first time. I don't know how many of you have. Most teenagers don't really know the consequences. And I think that analogy is just not relevant. It's not just relevant for teenagers, but it goes further. And so I think with the big companies, there is such an asymmetry of power, bargaining power, because there are network effects. If all your friends are on Facebook, you have to be on Facebook. If your family members are on Facebook and they're sharing images, you feel left out. We are social beings. And I think, therefore, simply the giving permission may not be enough. Therefore, there might be need for a more radical action, such as the one that was taken by Teddy Roosevelt against big oil. That's why I keep arguing that I generally am very uncomfortable with concentration of power, whether it happens in a church, whether it happens in a state, or whether it happens in a for-profit company. After all, we were colonized by a company. I'm Indian. I have a Pavlovian response to companies claiming they are doing the general good.
Good job.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there's been too much concentration of power. It's a time of record inequality anyway. And I think there's got to be some pushback as a result. All right. I think time's up.
Oh, there's one more question.
One more question. All right. Final question.
You mentioned that you break up a big tech company.
Yeah.
The way it's used to do that first.
Excellent. You already have ideas. I'm delighted. Excellent. What's your name? Leighton. Pleasure. Pleasure to meet you.
Either the big
You should write an article on this topic for Where Observer.
the big tech companies all agree to it. All agree to push their data into some sort of group or
Yeah.
that is managed.
So you mean the voluntary option?
Yeah. Or the forced option where the government forces that.
Exactly.
For the voluntary option, I don't see how that would be feasible given the amount of profits they would give up.
Exactly.
For the governmental option, you see that as a misuse of power or something.
No, if everyone votes for it, then, and if it is done through due process and through proper law, then that's the way laws are made. Standard Oil was broken up. So it's been done in the past. After all, the East India Company was wrapped up. So is it a misuse of power if people vote to do something against a company? No. Excellent. That's your answer. Jolly good. Thank you so much.